This whole Drake versus Kendrick Lamar beef battle debacle issue is the precise reason why it is critical that we are careful with the things we say we subscribe to. It is nothing to say that you support something, but when it comes down to dealing with a culture that is so drenched in idolatry, we must understand the true implications of what it means to call oneself a fan or a supporter of a thing. Let me just get out the main part of the argument. Drake fans are the worst. There, I said it. Now, there is nothing wrong with enjoying the work of individuals and conceding to the fact that you enjoy works from a creator. We all have the capacity for greatness, and it is essential that we take the time out to acknowledge such greatness when we observe it. The advent of a creator economy is the wet dream of any civilization because creation demonstrates the blessing of life, God's glory. It is fathomable as well to perceive that all things that are created cannot be observed by all people. I have always been someone who is careful with my words. That is to say, I am highly resistant to allowing someone to characterize my enjoyment of something as a worship of it. I enjoy some video games, but I am not a gamer. I enjoy women, but I do not worship women. The notion of idolizing something is indicative of two things: the capacity to relinquish responsibility of one's responsibilities, i.e., literally their own life, and two, a large capacity to appreciate the external. The latter is less damaging than the first, and is in fact a point of continuity in the archetypes of man. If life were all selfish, advancement in technologies would truly be exclusive to those who created their own means. In other words, we would all be forced to be inventors of our own peace in spirit and in object. We are forced, by way of the multiplicity of life, to appreciate that which we are exposed to. We have been given the instrument to perceive it. The former is really where the source of the damage is, where we must be careful not to lump ourselves in with that which we don't actually resonate with. The present age prefers the sign to the thing signified, the copy to the original, representation to reality, appearance to essence. Truth is considered profane, and only illusion is sacred. Sacredness is, in fact, held to be enhanced in proportion as truth decreases and illusion increases, so that the highest degree of illusion comes to be seen as the highest degree of sacredness. That's a quote by Ludwig Feuerbach. Let me again repeat that I have no problem enjoying music from either Drake or Kendrick Lamar. But to call myself a fan of Drake would be to call myself a supporter of the things he represents in this time period. That means that I attribute similar values to him that his general fan base would attribute to him, and thus I walk in similar ways. It would mean that I am in agreement with his support base as to what he represents. The question is, what does Drake represent? If we were to look through Drake's actions themselves, according to what has been brought to the public eye, it would be someone who has been able to thrive as a major force in at least two forms of entertainment, that it is possible to breathe life and have success through multiple creative avenues. Drake's story can serve as an inspiration for people who perhaps feel as if they have been limiting themselves to one particular pathway with a certain gnawing for another. I remember when I was in high school, and I was highly concerned about the fact that the vast majority of people had no idea what they wanted to do beyond high school as adults to sustain themselves. The prospect of not being aware of a general direction of where one wants to go with their lives is a pathway toward much disappointment, embarrassment, and uncertainty, especially considering that, as time goes, we are bound to increase in responsibility since we also increase in our desires since we are able to articulate them. Drake's story leaves enough room for his own reasons for why he has wound up where he is today, and the general story comes together cohesively with his clear persistence for the validation of others, shown through his persistent desire to be perceived as youthful or on top of trends and to be appealing to women, especially young women. But the only things to be perceived from a creator are not just the things that they have directly manifested, but also those whom they have affected, those who actually have placed themselves in the position to immerse themselves into Drake's image, to make it a part of them. Of course, there are always bound to be any number of interpretations that come about from dealing with these lot. One thing for certain, though, is there is a certain sort of continuity in dealing with idolaters, and that they fight hard to justify their veneration of their object. There is no convincing to the idolater that they are slaves unto themselves, and that they make the conscious decision to neglect their capacity for increase by isolating it to a particular object. It is a bit of a lesson for myself as a creator as I watch this culture of occultism, where there exists a pattern that says that creators are bound to be recognized by our naysayers before our work is recognized by our celebrators. There is reason for this, as will be discussed in a later video regarding the spirit of idolaters, but one thing for sure is that whatever it means to be honored, it generally does not equate to quick celebrations. Another thing to notice about idolaters is that they may think that they know more or are sophisticated by having invested so deeply into one particular thing. But they don't realize that the term idolater is a universal term for particular patterns of behavior, some of which I have already named previously. One thing for sure is that they are vulnerable and sensitive. Their whole reason for worship is tied to their reason for continuing to live. So anything that seems to attack that feels like a threat to their existence. In fact, there is a pattern here when observing idolaters, where they are usually first to hop onto anything regarding their object, especially criticisms. This makes them incredibly unbearable to even just casual observers, because the idolaters make it difficult for anyone to get a word in about their golden calf. It makes you wonder if they really digested the information that was brought to them at all, and what it is that really ties them to the totem. Again, we will address this on our actual discussion about idolatry. But I guess what is being begged most currently is what it is that Kendrick Lamar and his fan base stands for. First and foremost, it should be acknowledged that the entire notion of the fan base in the occultist culture that we are all observing shares a similar spirit with the spirit of idolaters. But alas, here is the opportunity to discuss the distances between the idolater and what careful speakers such as myself consider to be support. People know that there is a significant difference between liking something and glazing over something. In my hometown of Philly, we call this dick eating. Even as the person who is being glazed, which is suggestive of an excessive, unreasonable, and unnecessary expression of admiration for something, absolutely laments being in the presence of their glazers. Kendrick Lamar constantly expresses his disdain for his level of notoriety in celebrity culture, which he addressed even on his recent surprise album, GNX. Every day a new version of me, a third of me demented, cemented in pain, juggling opposing kinds of fame. I don't know how to make friends, I'm a lonely soul. So we know that on a ground level, Kendrick is not doing what he does because he is seeking the admiration of others. This is also shown by his significantly less frequent media appearances as opposed to any of the other top 3 rappers or even top 20 rappers of the culture. He is nowhere close to as active on social media as any other artist with his level of attention. So the proof is most definitely in the pudding in the realm of Kendrick's aversion to being worshipped. So of course, this would compel the critical thinker to beg the question of how he garnered his fame in the first place. But I don't think this question is helpful to ask in the quest of answering the question of what Kendrick stands for in this form, because we are already in the midst of answering the question through the answer that he doesn't stand for being mindlessly, that is, unreasonably, idolized. So the point is made. Since whatever Kendrick directly stands for is clearly much more about what he is not about, it is probably easier to deduce what he stands for by the people he has impacted. In observation of the recent release of his album, it is made clear that people appreciate Kendrick for the substance of his content, whether it be through his insane mustard quotable, or his cohesive collaborations, or his vocalizations about racial tensions. People constantly revere Kendrick because of what he says and how he does what he does. People appreciate Kendrick Lamar for his authenticity in what he represents, not necessarily because he desires to be recognized. Of course, this does not prevent there being the existence of Kendrick glazers, but that is not the point. The point is the ability to distinguish between the modes of support which extend from basic consumption to idolatry. I guess I really should be getting to composing this video for you guys about the nature of idolatry, because there is the need to discuss the spectra as well, where the spirit of idolatry is not just about the positive expression of excessive admiration in the form of praise, but about being outwardly and unreasonably opposed to anything that opposes the object. This is an incredibly fluid state, and it does require us to have extensive conversations surrounding idolatry and self-control. But for now, this is more than sufficient to illustrate how I personally observe that Drake fans are mostly idolaters of Drake who are in denial of something or a few things to make him impervious to error, where plenty of other people are clearly more than willing to look at Drake as the human being that he is. The dynamic taints the appreciation of art and what it means to be recognized or to desire recognition. In the meantime, I will see you guys in the idolatry video.